Hi, I'm Louis Paul. This is the Colors of Prog. If you're just now joining this podcast show I have on the YouTube, Podbean, and Facebook, there's Colors of Prog. Just search either one of those platforms. I just talk about and review progressive rock recordings from the past and present from all around the world. It's a passion project. Today, I wanted to discuss two English language releases. It's a rarity, actually, of Banco's albums. But in order to set that up, I have to tell you a bit more about the band. I've spoken of them before in the past, and I reviewed an album or two, but that's probably about 2 years back, if not a little longer. So, by the way, this is Season 3, Episode 24, I believe. Hope so. Anyway, Banco Del Mutuo Soccorso translates into English as a bank of mutual relief. They were formed in Italy in 1969, but the lineup didn't solidify until 1972 when they released their self-titled debut album, which is this one. It was a die-cut sleeve fashioned after a coin bank, and it had this little pull-out thing with images of the band members. Pretty cool, huh? Also, kind of hard to get back in once you get it out. Anyway, this was a colored vinyl. As you could see, it's like a yellowish gold on the Sony Music label from 2021. It's a cool thing. I gotta get this back in here. There. I'm not a big fan of colored vinyl, folks. Sometimes the mastering doesn't sound great. On a lot of these re-releases, it doesn't matter what country it comes from. But sometimes it can sound pretty good. It's a roll of the dice. So let's get back to this album here. Self-titled debut, 1972. They're thought of today as one of Italy's most progressive music bands, and one of the most well-regarded. The lineup that features on this and several of the original early Banco albums, the most well-known lineup, features the Nocenzi brothers, both Gianni and Notorio on keyboards and vocals, Marcello Todaro on guitars and vocals, Renato Di Angelo on bass, Pierluigi Calderoni on percussion, and of course the robust Francesco Di Giacomo on lead vocals. His voice is theatrical, even operatic at times. It's big and grandiose. The two keyboardists working side by side, filling in gaps in the sound. It's also a little jazzy here. And far as the prog rock side of things, you can think about the early keyboard contributions on the early Yes albums. Also, it tends to get a little Dave Brubeck at times, and when Francesco sings in a lower key register, his vocals, it reminded me of like Nina Simone, Sinner Man, that pretty popular song, if you're totally unfamiliar with Nina Simone. So imagine Sinner Man if sung in Italian rather than in English. So the debut was well received, the album that looked like a coin bank. And though it sounds, I have a CD copy, of course, Though it sounds rather brief and short at 40 minutes, think of it this way: it's just like 3 or 4 long songs. It's not like 10 songs that are really short and it's 40 minutes long. It's only 3 or 4 songs. Um, R.I.P. Requiescent in Pace, Rest in Peace, runs almost 7 minutes. Metamorphosis runs 11. And then there's a suite in 4 parts that runs nearly 20 minutes. Now, Darwin, their second album, was also released in 1972. Now, Darwin was pretty much a ballsy move for a sophomore album. It's a concept recording about Darwinism and the argument that established religions at the time, in the early 70s, had with that. Still do it today. Most of the 7 songs are of average length, except there's 2 long ones. 7 songs, 5 songs, average length. One is 14 minutes. It's called The Evolution. And there's a 9-minute song called La Conquista. Also much beloved by hardcore Italian prog fans. If you see RPI mentioned, and often in certain circles and the online art sites, you'll see RPI. It's Rock Progressive Italiano. That's how they refer to themselves, RPI or Italian prog. By 1973, they were very prolific. They released Io sono nato libero, I Am Born Free, another concept album. Here's the back cover, by the way, of the re-release, also on colored vinyl. This was released in 2017 on Sony Music. Now you notice they also included a CD with this. Nice vinyl version. Actually, this sounds very nice. The CD looks like a old 45, doesn't it? It resembles that. But no, it's actually a CD version of the album. So, as I said, another concept album. One song, Canto Normale, approximately 60 minutes. The third song, La Cita Sottili, is over 7, and Dopo Niente is nearly 10 minutes long. Now, let's be clear. Other bands like PFM, Liorme, and even New Trolls released recordings to the Italian prog listening audience that were, let's say, more accessible. But was the world ready for progressive music that sometimes sounded like double-track Dave Brubeck going at the same time with an emotional sounding singer? I mean, look, to be frank, a lot of these Italian bands, especially the ones I mentioned, Leorme, PFM, even Osana, another one, have very emotional sounding vocals. This is part of the Italian heritage. But Francesco Di Giacomo had an ultimate emotional sounding voice. Like going to church and just hearing some emotional singer pour his heart out. In 1975, Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, ELP, were enjoying quite the crossover popularity, and they even created a subsidiary label called Manticore. Manticore handled their releases, and Greg Lake in particular was known to be a fan of Italian bands, probably stemming as far back as his time at King Crimson and touring Italy. Manticore released English language versions of albums of a number of Italian bands, some successful, some not, including PFM, Chew by Banco. Now, here's an original, which is way cool to have. This is 1975. English language album. And here's what the band looked like at the time. Now notice there's only 7 songs here. I'm going to get to this in a second. Banco, their English language debut, features songs that were translated to English and re-recorded in England from the first 3 albums, but it omits all the longer epics. Only one song is from Darwin's, so the bulk of the material is from the first and third album. It's quite striking. I mean, you're going to introduce a foreign band to audiences in English-speaking countries, and they probably thought it was a joke, but that is Francesco Di Giacomo. He was a heavyset gentleman, and but that's the debut on Manticore. And you recognize the label, the Manticore label. They had great faith in this band, I'll tell you that. You mean, a gatefold sleeve. And you wouldn't believe how I acquired this. It's one of those moments where you go on to eBay, yes, eBay, and it looked like a charity shop, had it for $5 US. And I'm like, that can't be true. And I looked at it, that's the Banco album. Very hard to get. It's mint. So it's quite the nice find. After this, the band released an all-instrumental album that was a soundtrack, Garofano Rosso. It was originally designed to be for a Italian television program that was extended to theatrical release. I'm sure people who purchased that Banco album, a little surprised, whereas Francesco's vocals, they're not on there because it's an instrumental album. Banco returned in 1976 with Come in to me no sina. Very striking album cover. There's the back. And it was curiously chosen as the English language follow-up to Banco's Manticore debut. So, what is this about? Let me get the English language one. Also an original. And I'm going to get to something in a moment. So what does that translate to the Italian? As in The Last Supper. An oddity in progressive rock in any language, the album, another concept piece, details in a sort of abstract way the events that occurred during the Last Supper up to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. I kid you not. Whereas the Manticore release of Banco saw that all the music and vocals were re-recorded in a London studio, whereas in The Last Supper, only Francesco's vocals were re-recorded into English, and they were mixed with the original Italian music tracks. Both their English language albums have some jarring album covers. As I mentioned earlier and showed you, the heavyset near naked Francesco is on the Banco, and the inner sleeves sometimes of this depicts the band in the recreation of the Last Supper. You see here's Francesco. Pretty audacious. This is the English language version on Manticore. Music is very good. I'm sure a lot of people were shaking their head, though, when they saw this in record bins, no matter where you were. In America, I bet, so we're talking 1976, I bet some people thought this was like some weird satanic metal album, not realizing it was Italian progressive rock. Now, these were both re released by Esoteric Recordings in 2010, both the Italian and English language versions. Uh, that's both the Banco album and the As in the Last Supper. But I believe those are now out of print, as far as I'm able to ascertain. So Banco continued recording and touring, and at some point in time, progressive rock music in Italy became a little out of fashion for a bit. And so what happened was they found themselves recording more pop-oriented music, and some could even say dance music, because that was popular. Disco was popular. They lost a lot of their early followers, but then again, no one was really writing that much really new progressive music. But then a lot of the bands at that time couldn't find labels that would carry them. So a lot of the bands that used to be on larger labels found themselves on smaller labels in Italy until there was a rebirth. And in a lot of the bands, Italian prog is currently very popular. Francesco Di Giacomo passed away in a car accident in the early 2000s. He was not a young man at the time either, but they have a singer who's been with them for the last several years, and they just, during the pandemic alone, between 2021 and 2023, they released 2 new recordings. So good for them. There's very few members of the band from the original band, which happens. It's been how many years? The first recording was 1972, I said. So, but they're still around. Yeah, and I'll be talking more, speaking about more of their music other times later on down the road. But yeah, I just really want to discuss As in the Last Supper, and I had to do that whole lead-in, so you know what I'm talking about, and the Banco album, which both were on Manticore. So, yeah, if you say, well, I'm not going to listen to Italian prog because it's in Italian, well, find these. They're in English. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening. Have a great day.